the way I came was what I call the red carpet program. So the red carpet was rolled out, and I just walked on it. So when I was maybe 18, I had an experience which made me realize that the happiness I'm looking for, I could get it within me. So then I became very interested in finding out how to do that. And one day I was in a bookstore and I saw the Bhagavad Gita, and I didn't know what it was. And Krishna told me from within, read that book. And fortunately I didn't buy that Bhagavad Gita, it wasn't Prabhupada's. But on my college campus, the devotees had arranged to teach Bhagavad Gita through a philosophy professor, so it was an accredited course. So I got to study Bhagavad Gita as an accredited course. And for those 10 weeks, I studied Bhagavad Gita with the devotees twice a week. And went to the Sunday feast. And that worked to destroy my material life. And when I write an article in BTG, then they put my credentials as he dropped out of the University of California at Berkeley before he finished his second-year education. That's my qualification. So, why do I say red carpet? Because the devotees were doing kirtan every day on campus. Every day I go to campus, the devotees were there. And they're teaching me Bhagavad Gita. So what better way to learn Krishna consciousness? And that year I had a very light load academically. I decided to have a light load. So it was perfect time to get into Krishna consciousness because I really only had 3 hours. I had maybe 15 hours a week of class time and homework. The whole week. So I had a lot of free time. So in that 10 weeks I read Bhagavad Gita twice. So Krishna arranged to give me that opportunity. And then, when the term was over, then I went to Los Angeles, where I'm from Berkeley, which is about 400 miles. So I had a car and we drove down. And I lived very close to the temple by Krishna's arrangement, where the home I grew up in was about 3/4 of a mile from the temple in Los Angeles. So I went to the temple and they told me Prabhupada's coming. I had no idea. So then I got to meet Prabhupada. And you probably want to know what it was like when I met him.
Yes.
That's question number 2.
Please.
Question number 2. And it's very simple to answer this question. 3 words. You can't explain it. So next question. Okay, so when you describe what it's like to meet Prabhupada, you have to describe your own experience. I think that's the best way. So I think I can speak for many devotees. Number 1, it was emotionally overwhelming. So many people, when they meet Prabhupada, myself included, will start crying. And crying is not an intellectual process. You don't know why you're crying. You're just overwhelmed. At least I didn't know why I was crying.
First time.
First time you just see him. And it's like, I still can't tell you why I was crying. I don't know why, but it was an overwhelming experience. And I think the most significant thing about this is that I had been coming to the temple at this point for 10 weeks, but I wasn't chanting 16 rounds yet, although I had decided I would, but I wasn't. And I was some days following the 4 regular principles, some days not, because the fan was slowing down. But I had decided to join the temple, and I knew when I joined the temple, that's it. So in these last few days, I think I was indulging, like the before Ramadan, the Muslims they party, right, and then get ready for Ramadan. So I was probably a little bit in that mood. So not yet a devotee, not yet following all the regular principles every day, not yet chanting 16 rounds, and then seeing Prabhupada and feeling this way. I think it says a lot. This is not like I was a pure devotee. I was still getting out of the material entanglement, and I was overwhelmed seeing Prabhupada. As I said, many devotees also felt that. So it was you weren't seeing a person like anyone you'd ever seen before, and it was quite overwhelming. It was just, what was Prabhupada like? He wasn't like anybody I've ever seen. That's the best way I can describe it. And then, so what was the feeling being with Prabhupada? The feeling was that in his presence, there was only one feeling. I just want to serve Krishna. And I just want to serve you. That was the only feeling. And it didn't matter if you were on a low level of Krishna consciousness or a high level. That was the feeling everybody had. I just want to serve. And it was not an intellectual experience. It was simply from the heart. Being in the presence of a pure devotee, the heart just was gushing with a desire to want to be like him, to want to help him, to want to serve his mission, to want to follow him. Spontaneously and naturally. So Krishna was so kind that he sent someone like Srila Prabhupada, by whose presence, if anyone was a little bit open to Krishna, that would flow out of their heart. And so very young devotees could do amazing things. Even though they weren't technically very advanced spiritually, but by their actions, they were acting in a very advanced way. And so if you have the opportunity to see any videos of our movement in 1970, 1971, the average time a devotee has spent in the movement in those videos was probably a year or less. But by their behavior and by what's going on, it doesn't indicate these are all new devotees. It looks like they're very mature devotees. So because of Prabhupada's presence, there was a very deep level of commitment. And you see that in those videos. And it doesn't look like these people 6 months ago were on the street smoking marijuana, listening to the Beatles, sleeping over at a different girl's house every night. It doesn't look like that at all based on what they're doing. So Prabhupada's presence had that power, that if there was little faith in the part of a person, then in his presence one would just be willing, without fighting or resisting, to surrender.
Any special memories of Prabhupada, that special interaction that you had?
Oh, myself? Interaction? I can tell. Well, my personal interactions were through mail.
Okay.
Because I was a temple president, so we got to write letters. Other than my other personal interactions were not with me one-on-one, but within groups. So, in mail, it was interesting, because I would ask Prabhupada questions, and sometimes it seemed like he knew exactly my psychology. And the answer to the question was exactly what I needed to strengthen me or to direct me to do something, or to direct me not to do something which would have not been good for me, understanding my nature. And it was, I'll give you an example. It was very interesting. I had an idea that we should form a band, like a rock and roll band, because if the rock and roll band became successful, we would have influence over people, because at least in those days, whatever the rock and roll band said, either personally or in their songs, it just influenced the younger generation. So you could actually influence a whole younger generation to think in a certain way through your music if you were popular enough. So then I thought, if we formed a band and became popular, we would have major influence. And then if we did concerts, we could just give out books to everybody, because we would make so much money. So everybody could get a Krishna book, for example. So we could distribute 5,000, 10,000 Krishna books. So I wrote this idea to Prabhupada, thinking that this could actually happen, that we could become famous. And with that fame, we could use it to preach. So then Prabhupada wrote back and he said, don't try to become famous. And I was thinking that I wasn't trying to become famous, I just wanted the band to become famous so it could preach. And Prabhupada saying, don't try to become famous. The fact is that before I was a devotee, I wanted to be famous as a rock musician, as any teenage boy who plays guitar would. Right? And I wasn't thinking that when I wrote the letter, but Prabhupada's saying, no, you want to become famous. And it kind of hit me, and I realized, I said, yeah, that desire is there also. And I think Prabhupada understood that if that happened, that probably would have been the end of my Krishna consciousness, because I wouldn't have been able to handle it, although my intention was to use it for Krishna. And then the second thing he said, which showed a little bit of my impractical side, or maybe irresponsible side as well. He said, it'll never happen. You're not going to become a famous rock. Like they say, the chances of becoming a famous rock and roll star are equal to winning the lottery. There's only a few. How many bands are there in America? Maybe 100,000. How many are really well known? Maybe 20 or 30, 40, 50. I don't know. So he said in the letter, he said, this is all phantasmagoria. You think you're going to become famous. And he said, if you have an inclination for music, just use that for kirtan. Don't, have all these wild ideas. So it just showed me how in touch Prabhupada was with me and my stupidity or foolishness or nature. So you could kind of take that as a chastisement. And then another time, I was having trouble. I was frustrated in married life, and I really wanted to get free from it, and I just wanted to be free to travel and preach. So I wrote Prabhupada and I said, it's not working. I just can't deal with this anymore. Then I take sannyas. And then Prabhupada said, I do not want to give sannyas to any man, grihasta, who has not first become responsible grihasta. So I had a nature to be irresponsible. There are other men who ask for sannyas who are married, and he let them do it. But with me, he said the word responsible. Be ideal, be responsible. Then we'll talk about sannyas. Because I wasn't being responsible. So it was a perfect answer for me. Because I had that nature just, we say footloose and fancy free. That means you just go wherever you want, be a free spirit, do anything. So I was willing to walk out on a marriage with a small boy, child, 1-year-old child. Become ideal grihasta, then we'll talk about sannyas. So that was, So basically that was a chastisement also. But then another time, Prabhupada complimented me, because many people were joining in our temple where I was the president. And then he wrote to the GBC after the GBC told Prabhupada that many people were joining here, and Prabhupada said, yes, Mahatma is very sincere. And I mean, how can I say that? It sounds like I'm proud, but I just want to say it because I felt, again, Prabhupada understood, because I felt I was sincere. And I would pray every day, Krishna, please send devotees. And so the devotees were coming. And so I was sincerely trying as best I could, and Prabhupada said he's very sincere, which indicated again that Prabhupada understood something about me. This time something good at least. So I find that quite interesting. This is like right on. And there was no personal contact, this was just letters. Nice, isn't it? It's not like we were together, so he knew me and therefore said these things. He understood. Then another time, when the Krishna book came out, I wrote him a letter. I was very excited. Because before the Krishna book came out, we only knew a handful of Krishna Lila, because we didn't have Srimad Bhagavatam, and we didn't grow up in India, and we didn't watch movies about Krishna, so we only knew a few things. So when the Krishna book came out, then we understood Krishna Lila and who Krishna is. So I was so excited. I had this realization that nobody knows who God is. They don't know these Leelas. They know God is great, and God is love, God is this, but they don't know these intimate Leelas. So I was all excited. I wrote Prabhupada, I said, I just realized that, people, at least in America, nobody knows this. The Judeo-Christian tradition, they don't know who God is. And Prabhupada said, yes, this is true. So I was like a little kid, just like, opened a present and was really excited, and I was writing my father, wow, this is such a nice present, nobody knows this. So he said, yes. We are telling them who is God. Go to a priest, go to a rabbi, who is God. You're not going to get the intimate pastimes of Krishna.